Welcome to Talking Jazz. My guest today is Dave Stryker, talking with me from New York. We will be talking about his brand new album with the WDR Big Band from Cologne, Germany. And I'm excited to talk about that because I actually got to go into their studios and know a lot of the players and know how special this is. Before we dive in, I want to just get a little bit of your background. You know, it's always good to know how you got into music and the great people you got to play with to hone your skills. So welcome, Dave, and give us a little synopsis.
Monika, nice to talk to you in these crazy times we're going through. And yeah, this record was just a thrill, a real thrill to get to do this for a number of reasons. One was that Bob Mintzer, who I think is one of the greats, he really made it happen. He's the chief. His title is the chief conductor of the WDR Big Band, but he also arranges. To answer your question, I'm originally grew up in a town called Omaha, Nebraska, which is right in the middle of the country. You know, I had an older sister that had the Beatle records. So, you know, when I was a little kid, I'm listening to the 45s of the Beatles and stuff. And so I started taking lessons on guitar when I was 10. And by the time I was 12, I was playing in a little rock band and just always kept playing. And when I got into high school, I went to a jam session at the Union, and they were playing song from my father. I got up there with my guitar, my Telecaster, and I had long hair, and you know, I didn't know anything. I got up and started playing over song from my father, and one of the guys came up, the older, you know, jazz musicians came up and said, "Hey man, you can't be playing that rock and roll. This is jazz." And I was, "Jazz? What's that?" Next day I went to the record store, to Homer's Records, and picked up, I walked out of there with a Coltrane record, my favorite things, and a George Benson record. As soon as I heard that, I was like, what? Wow, what are they doing? My friends and I, we started learning tunes and jamming on, you know, learning standards, and had gotten a band that played at a Hilton in town where we would play, you know, 6 weeks at a shot and 6 nights a week, 4 sets. And first 2 sets would be standards, and the second 2 sets would be top 40, and, you know, practicing and learning from the records how to play. And I ended up moving to New York in around 1980. Went up to Harlem and sat in with Jack McDuff, the organ player, who was, you know, very famous, and a lot of great guitar players who played with him, you know, George Benson, Pat Martino, and Grant Green, all my favorites. Ended up getting the gig with him for like 2 years. I played on the road with Jack, and it was a great experience to get to play with someone, you know, of that caliber and really pay the dues of being on the road. We had a steady 4-night-a-week gig up in Harlem when we weren't on the road. And so we would play from 10 to 4 in the morning, Thursday through Sunday.
That teaches you.
But a lot of guys would drop by there, you know, guys like Lou Donaldson and George Benson came in one night, and Lonnie Smith and Stanley Turrentine. I guess Stanley heard me there the first time, and then when after I left Jack after a couple of years, Stanley hired me, and I ended up staying with Stanley for 10 years, playing all over the world with him and doing a few records, and it was invaluable to get play with the masters like that while they were still here, and I'm very grateful for that experience, and feel like at this point most of them are gone now, and I try to pass on what I learned from those guys. So that's how I came to be teaching these days.
Explains a lot your love for the organ trio too, you know, coming up to
there. Even in Omaha, there was a great organ player there. Then when I played with, you know, Jack, you know, Jimmy, got to play with Jimmy Smith. He would sit in, and played with Lonnie Smith for a while after that. I love that sound of the organ trio with the guitar. And after I left Jack, there was many years there where I didn't play with organ. I had a group with Steve Slagle for a long time, just bass, guitar, drums, and saxophone, and we played a lot around New York and stuff. And then I got a deal with Steeplechase Records. I started recording for them in like 1990, and he would record me like once a year for about 20 years. I got to do all kinds of projects, and at one point I said, let me do something with organ. And a young guy that was just coming on the scene named Larry Goldings used him. I think he was 24 or 25. And I did another one with Joey DeFrancesco at that time. These are in the 90s. But then a club opened up in West Orange, New Jersey, where I live, called Cecil's, and they had an organ in there. And that's where I met Jared Gold, the organ player, and he was, you know, really fantastic, traditional organ, but he was just a great musician, and, you know, could play really modern. So we've been playing together for about 10 years. I guess I got back into doing the organ trio thing at that point, just because trio is easier to book and travel with.
Yeah, if you have a packable organ, but he has that, so that helps.
A portable organ he designed in B3 that folds up, taking it all over the world. They don't have a regular B3 there.
Well, let's get some music in, and then we'll talk some more about this, because just trying to summarize all the great people you played with in a little synopsis doesn't work. So the first tune we'll listen to is Aha from the record, and that's a Bob Mintzer composition. And I can so hear the saxophone melody creation in there. There's a lot of reminiscing about the lines about Michael Breckerish influences, and a really cool tune.
Bob is one of from that generation of Mike Brecker and Bob Berg, Bob Mintzer, Jerry Bergonzi, Liebman, Steve Grossman. All those guys were in New York in the 70s, really took that post-Coltrane saxophone thing to another level. I guess, Brecker, of course, would be the most famous of them all, but Bob was right in there with all those guys.
So this is an upswing tune written by Bob Mintzer with the WDR Big Band, but Bob is also soloing on it as well as Hughes. Let's have a listen, enjoy, and listen to this great angular melodies. That was Aha from the new album of Dave Stryker's with the WDR Big Band, which recently was #1 on the Jazz Week charts and is doing really well. And my guest today is Dave Stryker, and you just heard him on the guitar solo. I want to ask you a little bit about this system of being able to record with the big band in this case. So this is a very special scenario because the WDR Big Band is a radio big band, and it's fully funded by the state of Germany and fully financed. And it's their mission to do these new recordings and projects all the time. And that's really unique because in the States, it would be probably much more difficult to pull a big band together of that level and rehearse and record. And I've been in the place, it's called the Funk House because funk in Germany is Funke, meaning the broadcasting system. So tell us a little bit about your time in the Funk House and what that does for you being able to do that, to work with a big band like that.
Yeah, this was a real dream. I'd actually also been on a tour many years ago. I had visited the Funk House, or the WDR studio. I was on tour with my group or something over there. I remember going there, and I think Joe Lovano was the guest that week, but I knew a few of the guys in the band, and I just hung out. And like you said, this is radio orchestra. I think there's 4 of them throughout Germany, besides Cologne. They're supported by, everybody pays a little bit of money out of their taxes. I think it's very small, like $8 a year or something, but just that much it allows them to bring in artists from all over the world, not just the U.S., and do projects. And Michael Abini has been there, and a lot of people, but Bob is there now. And Bob I've known since I've been in New York, and he has been a guest with my trio on some tours. And I have some of the stuff I've been doing lately is called the 8-track project, where I do tunes from the 70s, and I kind of rearrange them so my own way, and they've been pretty popular. So we would play some of those tunes with Bob. When he would play with us, we would do some of them. So he kind of had the idea this would be a really good project for WDR. And so I went over there for a week, and Bob had written these arrangements that are just killer. I mean, some of those things I had already arranged for a smaller group. So he just took those ideas on about half of them were like that, and he expanded them just in an amazing way. And other ones he just arranged, completely, like from just from my lead sheet. And it was, a real dream to walk into a studio with first call musicians. John Goldsby was a friend of mine. He's the bassist, and he's been over there for over 25 years. And a guy named Oliver Peters is in the sax section that I knew from New York. Different Americans have gone through there. Andy Hunter is in there, and the pianist now is a guy named Billy Test, who's just recently joined. And it's a very nice gig to get, a lucrative gig, and a very hard gig to get, because you're on a salary and you're going to work every day, but you're playing music. And it's in a recording studio with 3 great engineers. All we did is just started playing, and Bob put the music in front of them, and they hit record. And so we had about 2 or 3 rehearsals. Then we did a couple gigs and recorded everything. And I told them, I said, look, I want to make sure that I can release this on my own label. We did the contract and everything, and really, really thrilled to hear my music expanded, to have Bob involved, who's, I think, is one of the greatest musicians I know, and arranger and saxophonist. The whole band, all of them are just fantastic. Then all of a sudden this happened in March, this pandemic, and I had already made plans to release the record, and I thought, maybe I shouldn't do that, maybe I should wait till this is all over. It's a terrible time to try to do this. And then I said, you know what, this is all I can do is try to put some positivity out there, so let me put my record out and let people have something to listen to if they want. And,
I know, I was in a similar situation. I released the record in March and thought about it long and hard. Should I just pull it back out and wait? It seemed like, let's just put it out, because people are still there. They didn't disappear, and they need something to listen to.
Can't do what we usually would do, which would be a tour around a record coming out. That's a little bit of a drag, but in a world like the world is today, I think it's good to put positive energy out there. That's all we can do with our music.
That next tune is definitely one with positive energy. So this is one of yours, the Blues Strut. And you were just talking about how Bob takes your tune sometimes just in bare form and arranges it for big band. So how much did he put on this one?
Well, this was just a 12-bar blues that I wrote. Bob played with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, so he learned from the best. And he also, first time I saw him, he was playing with Buddy Rich, and he started arranging for that group. So he just, knocks it out of the park with his arrangements, man. And on this one, he blows a solo too. He blows a solo on the last tune as well.
Yeah, this is a really cool, hard shuffle tune, and I think it just really exemplifies your style and approach. Is always groovy and danceable and shuffly. Let's listen to it. So this is Blues Strut, and we'll hear solos from you, of course, from Bob Minter and Billy Test on the organ. Right. So we'll get all 3 of those. Here we go. Blues Strut from the WDR Big Band with Dave Stryker. very cool shuffle. My guest today is Dave Stryker. We're talking about his work with the big band and his work, of course, as a guitarist, playing with so many wonderful people. And recently, you said over the last decade, getting into this concept of taking Motown classics, pop classics, usually tunes you wouldn't associate immediately with jazz, and transforming them into jazz tunes. And they're called the 8-track series, referring kind of the nostalgia here of recording equipment, I guess. So tell us a little bit about your approach of picking tunes and transforming them. How do you do that?
Even from when I first started playing jazz in Omaha, one of the local sax players, Bobby Thompson, took me under his wing and kind of showed me standards. And they would play gigs like at the Holiday Inn or something, and they would play a tune like Never Can Say Goodbye, by the Jacksons, or Call Me, You Are the Sunshine of My Life. All these pop tunes, and just swing them or do them in a jazz, and there was always a communication with people when they heard a song they know. If you play Misty or Girl from Ipanema on a gig, somebody comes up and says, "Oh, I love that version of Girl from Ipanema you play," because they want to have a connection with you, and that's what music is about. Then when I got with Jack McDuff, the same thing. He would have a pop tune in there usually. So it's always just, it wasn't anything unusual, and it wasn't anything necessarily original. And Stanley Turrentine, same thing. When I worked with him, he did a whole record of Stevie Wonder music, and Stanley was always about playing for the people. So when I started playing, I have my own group around New York, I used to throw in a tune like Close to You by the Carpenters or something, and these tunes had nice changes, and I would say on the mic, this is going to be on my next record, Dave Stryker plays the hits of the 8-track, and people would laugh. And for those who don't know what that means, 8 tracks was the first time you could play a cassette in your car, and they were these big clunky things, and it wasn't the greatest technology, but it evokes a time of great pop music, the late 60s and the 70s, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Earth, Wind and Fire, Curtis Mayfield, all on and on. So just great music. And I was joking about that'll be on my next record, Dave Plays the Hits of the 8-track, and then people started coming up and saying, "Hey, when's that record coming out, that 8-track record? I want to buy that." And a little light bulb went off. I was like, "Oh man, maybe I should try this, just do a record like this." And I said, I better hurry up and do it before somebody steals my 8-track idea. So yeah, I put it out, and it was very successful, and so I did a second one a few years later, a third one a few years later. Basically, that's the music that I grew up with, so it's also means something to me. And it's always fun, I usually start making lists of tunes I dig. I have to whittle it down because I have to figure out what could I do, to make this work in a jazz way. And sometimes I have to add some chord changes if there's just a 1-chord song or something. But it's a nice challenge. I enjoy it, and I think we've had some nice luck with some of those arrangements, and people have really responded to it, and I think people are happy to make that and
let them come in. Sometimes we don't think about this coded environment and this is what we do, but we can't expect everybody to understand and have the same background, and we need to reach out and say, "Hey, I've given you an invitation to come into this world and enjoy like we enjoy."
The thing is that if you take the melody of the song and you figure out a way to play it in my way, or put my stamp on it, then you can still improvise and as far out as you want, and they'll go with you because they recognize that you're playing a tune that they know. Yeah.
Right. Helps you understand the principle. And this next one is especially special right now. It's Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. Sure, you didn't plan on that, but it came right out into the whole protest movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, which gave it, an extra meaning being part of it. And it has a killing alto solo by my favorite alto player, Carolina Strassmeyer, who is in the WDR Big Band and is Austrian, came from the Graz University. So I know a bit of her background. She's a wonderful, wonderful player. So I'm excited you have her on here and wailing.
She sure is. She's great. I didn't realize you knew each other, but I guess I should assume that. Yeah, she's fantastic, as is everybody in the band. But I was really glad that Bob. It's a big band, so people are not everybody gets to play in a big band. That's just the nature of the game. I was really happy that she got to play this solo, and she really sounds beautiful on it. And this arrangement by Bob, based on my arrangement, I think it's one of my favorite things on the record.
It's cool. It's in 3 and it gives it this different type of waltzy groove to it.
Right.
So yeah, let's have a listen. What's going on? So originally Marvin Gaye, arranged by Dave Stryker and Bob Mintzer for the WDR Big Band, and featuring Carolina Strassmeyer on the alto sax, and of course Dave Stryker on guitar, and Billy Tess on the organ again. And this is from the recent release Blue Soul with Bob Mintzer arrangements and the WDR Big Band. was What's Going On, an arrangement by Bob Mintzer and Dave Stryker for the WDR Big Band and recently released on Blue Soul. And my guest today is Dave Stryker, sharing with us some of the background and info about how this record came about and much more. So we just talked about arrangement techniques and taking familiar melodies and turning them into your own construction and a vehicle of expression. This next tune even more so. So this is a Prince one, McDuff's Cry. You know, I think sometimes it's a real challenge if you have these songs that depend very much on the lyric, and often the melody is constructed around the lyrics, not necessarily the biggest, most elaborate melody. You know, it's constructed with a few notes, and that can be a real challenge. So how did you attack this one?
I pretty much really tried to stick to songs that were on 8-track. And one of the real challenges of this project was coming up with a up-tempo burner, as we call it in the jazz parlance, you know, a burning straight ahead tune that's a pop tune. That is a real challenge, and not, you know, because the last thing anybody wants to do is to be corny, and you know, that's, got to avoid that at all costs. And you know, I have my son, my youngest son Will, is also, he's loves music. He gives me ideas sometimes too. This one, I like Prince, of course, and I thought this one I could do something with. You'll see it's completely different than what he did. It was a challenge, and you know, I had to put some different harmonies on it and different chord changes, because it's just a one-chord song basically, but still keep the melodies there. And like I said, it's a real challenge doing this project. This was a fun one, man. You know, up-tempo burner. Johan Horland is the alto soloist on this one, if I'm saying his name right, I hope. Yeah, and then the drummer Hans Decker. Johan is Swedish. So yeah, they're European from all over, U.S. and different parts of Europe, not just Germany.
Something to realize is landing a position in that big band is the absolute dream job, and combined in that group really is the best ones of whole Europe.
Bob, when we walked in there, and you know, from the downbeat, they can play anything, and they are all great soloists, and they know how to get a sound together because they do it all the time. It was a real thrill. You know, we had to tweak some things, and I had to talk about the way I phrase certain things, and I would play something for them. You know, this is how I want it to be phrased. Bang, they would write it. They'd be scratching on their parts, knew exactly what I meant. So yeah, they're just great musicians for sure, and it's definitely a coveted gig. It's pretty lucrative, I believe, too. You know, it's deep for a musical gig.
Full-time position with a full salary, and the job of the big band is to create the content for the radio station. Right. So they get to play and get to do that every day.
I think the WDR also has, Bob was telling me, has 2 full-time orchestras as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of musicians working out of there.
Great way to earn money.
They're affected by this as much as we are in a lot of ways. They're back to trying to play some socially distanced gigs and stuff.
And the interesting thing I thought about your album was also that you self-released it. Was that a conscious decision?
Yeah, I've had my own label now for about 10 years. Like I mentioned earlier, I recorded for a Danish label called Steeplechase for about 20 years. Nils Winter was a great supporter of my music, and I'm very much appreciative of him. So I would do about 1 record a year, and in the meantime, I also worked for other labels and had a few different labels that I was recording for. After a while, you come to realize, you know, I should just have my own label and do everything myself, pay for it myself, but get all the proceeds will go to me, and I'll have total control from the album cover to the mixing of the music to make sure it's just exactly how I want it to sound, and paying the musicians correctly. You know, I've been doing this a pretty long time now. It became something that I wanted to have ownership of, and it's worked out really well for me. I've had a pretty good amount of success with it, and that has led to being able to do some nice gigs, touring, festivals all over the world. And you know, that's kind of how I know you do the same. We come up with a project or an album, and I know you have the Sheroes, you know, your group. You know, we write the music or we arrange the music, we record it, and then we try to, you know, get work around that, and I know you'll try to do the same, and so I know how hard a work it is. Hats off to you, Monika, as well. It is a difficult time right now, not being able to play for people. That's what fun, and that's what music is about, playing for people and getting that back and forth, sharing the moment. We look forward to getting back to that.
Especially the art form jazz is hit really hard because, you know, it's an art form that lives from the process of creating in front and with people. Being stripped of that, it's going going to be tricky. Hopefully we'll come back. But in the meantime, the best way to support and help out is if you like something, if you hear music you like, go get it. Don't just stream it and borrow it. Contact Dave Stryker and get your copy of the album that you can touch and read and see the whole thing together and not in little pieces.
Brings up a good point. And if you want to buy physical product, you can go to my website, davestryker.com. And if you want to get downloads and you want to support the artists, a lot of people use, and I know I am doing this now, a Band Lab, which is davestryker.bandcamp.com. I have all my stuff on my label on there, Strike Zone, and that's a good way to, if you want to support the artists. Of course, I resisted Spotify for a long time, but I've now kind of put everything up there because my son Wilkes said, that's just how people listen to music now. Anyway, but there's still ways to support artists in these times, and it's buying directly from them.
Absolutely. Bandcamp. And while everybody gets excited about this, let's get this burner going. So we're going to listen to When Doves Cry. So a Prince tune arranged Bob Mintzer and Dave Stryker from the album Blue Soul with the WDR Big Band. And it'll feature Dave Stryker on guitar and Johann Horlen on the alto sax and Hans Decker on the drums. And swing along. Here we go. That was When Doves Cry, a Prince composition arranged by the Bob Mintzer Big Band by Bob Mintzer for the WDR Big Band, featuring Dave Stryker on his new album Blue Soul. We have time to listen to one more from this album, and my guess is that this is pretty special for you. It's called Stan's Shuffle, and you mentioned earlier that Stanley Turrentine was one of the great artists you got to work with and tour with and was one of your mentors. You want to reminisce a little bit about being mentored by these great people?
Well, we talked about it earlier. I mean, I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity early in my career to play with Jack McDuff and Stanley Turrentine, and to get to share the bandstand, because I was with Stanley with guys like Dizzy Gillespie, Laws, and different people, and Jimmy Smith when I was with Jack McDuff. So, these were heroes of mine and still are, and great experience. And playing with a guy like Stanley, here's a guy that goal as musicians is to have our own sound. And Stanley's the kind of guy you could tell in a few notes that that's Stanley Turrentine. He's got a sound. And, to have to follow his solo every night really made you have to have strength in your playing, play from your heart, and play with feeling, keep that level. So that was a real learning experience to realize that, and a validation to be picked and to be in the band. Also gives you some courage and some confidence to put your own thing out there. And so these are a lot of things weren't specifically lessons learned. It was more the experience of night after night hearing somebody who was so consistently great and so played with so much feeling. And to me, music is the big three things: are your sound, rhythm, or your time feel, and then your harmony. That's what I tell my students. You gotta have a good sound on your instrument, no matter what instrument it is. Your time is the second most important thing, because you can be playing them, amazing harmonic ideas, but if it's not laying and it's not like in the pocket, people are not going to feel it. Those kind of things, that's how you can learn from getting to play with guys like that.
The whole idea of mentorship, is so crucial in jazz. Any last words before we go out and listen to Stan's Shuffle?
Bob Mintzer, I owe him a big debt of gratitude for bringing me to Cologne, Germany for a week to play with this great band, the WDR Big Band, and thank all the members of the band for playing so great on this record. I'm very proud of it. We're hoping to get nominated for a Grammy this year. I don't know how that works. Thank you for having me on. It's great to see you. We see each other in Bloomington, Indiana sometimes. Thanks for having me on and playing my music. I hope that it brings some positivity out there into the world.
Not to be underestimated. The food for the soul we can't live without, so much appreciated. Blue Soul is the right title for this album, and this band has been Grammy nominated before, so hey, let's root for it. It could work. So thank you for being on the show today. My guest was Dave Stryker, great guitarist, sharing with us music from his newest release, Blue Soul, arranged by Bob Mintzer, also the leader of the WDR Big Band. And the last selection we'll be listening to is Stan's Shuffle. This is a Dave Stryker original dedicated to Stanley Turrentine. It'll feature Bob Mintzer on the tenor sax, Dave Stryker on the guitar. Stanley Turrentine original with the Dave Stryker touch. Here's Stan's Shuffle. Enjoy. for listening to Talking Jazz. My guest today was guitarist, composer, and educator Dave Stryker. Tune in for Talking Jazz every Thursday at 11 a.m. and every Monday at 7 p.m. right here on WETF 105.7 FM in South Bend, Indiana, or online at WETFthejazzstation.org. Also find videos of previous shows on YouTube on the Monika Herzig channel. That's MonikaHerzig. Subscribe to get the newest updates. Thank you for listening.